As president of the Metapeace Association, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's Nobel Talk. Science and technology are engines of innovation, and they are also vital pillars of peace and transformative development. The Nobel Talks use the playfulness and openness of virtual worlds to create a space for dialogue where we can connect with leading voices who inspire our collective future. We are grateful to Professor Claudio Tessone and his team at the University of Zurich Blockchain Center, to Present Switzerland, the Swiss Pavilion, to all our supporters who have helped bring this event to life. We express our deepest gratitude to Hans Rudolf Herren for joining us today and for his lifelong commitment to advancing sustainable and equitable food systems for the benefit of people and the planet. Dr. Herren is a Swiss agronomist and an internationally recognized pioneer in agroecology. After completing his PhD in biological pest control at ETH Zurich, he became known worldwide for leading the biological control program against the cassava mealybug in Africa by applying parasitic wasps, an intervention that protected a vital food crop, averted famine, and saved millions of lives. He later served as Director General of the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology in Nairobi and went on to co-found the Biovision Foundation in Zurich, dedicated to promoting ecological solutions for sustainable agriculture worldwide. Since 2005, he has also led the Millennium Institute in Washington, D.C., where he supports governments and institutions in modeling sustainable development policies. His groundbreaking work has been honored with the World Food Prize in 1995 and, together with the Biovision Foundation, the Right Livelihood Award in 2013. Today he continues to advocate for biodiversity, ecological farming, and systemic approaches as the foundations of resilient and just food systems. His life's work is a reminder that how we feed the world is inseparable from how we care for nature and for each other. Please welcome Hans Rudolf Herren.
Thank you, Dennis, for the introduction. Thank you, Claudia, also for being in the background, make sure everything works. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you here, and thank you so much for this invitation to give that talk. A talk which is very much, again, in covering what I've been spending my life on, trying to get better food systems, in particular also the agriculture, the production of the food which is behind those food systems in a better sustainable way, also a healthy way for the environment. So I'll be going over to my PowerPoint, and there we go. Oh, okay, I went a bit too fast here. The title was A Biodiversity Powered Planet. I think we all around the world are talking about these issues of biodiversity, and I think it is a key element. And so I'm very happy to talk a bit more about this with you here today on this Nobel Talk. Now, biodiversity is not just a luxury or something we like to see because it's beautiful. I mean, it's part of it. And I think that we do enjoy our walks around nature. There's a lot of nature parks, there's butterfly parks. It shows that people are interested in the biodiversity. But again, it has been very much challenged by our behavior, and not the least actually in our food system, our eating behavior. So again, we love to see all these critters. We love to see the landscapes. Another thing I wanted to mention here is that the biodiversity is also including the people. We are also a very biodiverse group. And I think it's important to notice this when we talk about biodiversity. We all have different views. We look at things differently. But overall, I think we all value what we see out there, we value the nature. And this is particularly important these days when most people, they will spend their time on TikTok or I don't know where with artificial things. robots and bots of all sorts. Yeah, what about the real thing, sort of where we model even what we create artificially? So I think we want to make every effort to keep it and actually to rebuild it in most instances. And again, when I said, yeah, it's people, but it's also the plant, we know that, but it's also the landscapes. And it's important that we have a very diverse landscapes. Could be desert, could be what you see here on this slide, like a Middle European landscape. So we need to mention that, keep them very diverse. The one thing we have a tendency to forget, when we talk about biodiversity, is what we don't see, what's under our feet, and which is extremely important, I think, to maintain life. And some of you will know that there have been lately, thanks to new technologies in looking at things, a way and a mean to understand better, to know what's there under the ground or in the soil. And I just found this paper here by Robert Jonker and Nina Farwing about 2 days ago in Nature, where they described many organisms which we don't really see normally, which are on the ground and which are essential for the ecosystem functions which we all rely on for living. So again, it's not only what you see and what you know, but it's a lot of things which we don't see, which are important. And it's interesting also that, a lot of things you like. Huh? You like your coffee in the morning, you like to have blueberries in your breakfast cereals, maybe drink some passion fruit juice. I mean, all this is only possible if we have bees, and mostly wild bees. And again, they have been threatened extremely, almost around the globe, by pesticides, the overuse of pesticides. And so again, 60%, what you have in your plate every day comes from pollination, or is there thanks to pollination. Another big factor in the use of biodiversity or an ecosystem service is pest control. And here just those insects, the ladybugs on the left and the wasp on the right. These are parasites and predators of pest insects, and they actually keep them in check, as we had demonstrated in our biological control program across Africa, which eventually expanded to Asia to control a pest of the cassava mealybug, threatening millions and millions of people's food naturally. No pesticides involved, very little money involved. And actually, you can see that for every dollar which was put into this program, more than 243 came out, unseen in any development or even any pest control project. So it's huge. The benefits biodiversity can give you is just enormous. It will solve problems at a natural way, at very low or sometimes even almost no costs. But again, it's only possible if we have this diversity available. So think about if the areas where the mealybug came from way back then in Latin America and South America would have been plowed under. No more wild cassavas or cassava fields where to find the beneficials. We could not have solved the problem anymore. So again, it shows how important it is to maintain that diversity in the many different environments. Again, there's other ways of having diversity, which is very useful for our food system. Just for example, in this push-pull, there are caterpillars or eating corn around the world. It's in Africa, in Europe, in America, Latin America, everywhere. Corn and maize are very much affected by those insects. But again, there are natural ways of protecting them using beneficial insects. Also plants, and that's why we need to maintain a genetic diversity in plants. These plants have a capacity to resist insects. They have a capacity to call beneficial insects when they are attacked. So they are not just sitting there doing nothing, they're actually sitting there and calling beneficial insects, repelling pests. But that's only in the varieties which farmers have selected over hundreds of years. not so much in the highly bred new plants where these traits have been lost because we're looking only for yield. We're not looking for other benefits. And so again, we have taken a shortcut, which brings us very close to problems which are unsolvable in the future. So again, we need also this genetic diversity of our food crops. Come back to it later. And not only this, these systems capture carbon, fight climate change, while also capturing nitrogen, which will help the plant grow better. So here, this is feeding the soil, who then nourishes the plants. No artificial fertilizer, which contribute also to climate change because they're heavy in climate change gas production when they are made, also when they are applied. So again, we have, thanks to this biodiversity, genetic diversity, many solutions to many of our main challenges at the moment. So you see, this is the sort of a picture of what you see in Asia, where they are pulling out forest and basically planting oil palm plantation. And guess for what? A lot of the oil from oil palm is getting into diesel to be burned in trucks and tractors and cars. What a nonsense. You know, see that picture, it's pretty awful. This is in Mexico, also in Brazil, where there are soybeans just in a huge area. So where is the diversity here? There's one variety, one genotype. And this is bound to create huge problems. Or even here, fields in Canada where they grow rapeseed or rapeseed oil. This is all GMO, genetically modified, and also seed treated with neonicotinoids, which are synthetic paratrum, which are very much affecting bees everywhere in the world where rapeseed are planted, because now pesticides not only applied by airplane, but it's actually put on the seed. So it's everywhere in the plant, which we consume eventually. Or here, huge fields of crops. Look at the sky, nothing good coming here. Or the growing of villages and towns into the landscape, which destroy a lot of the diversity which we depend on, we all depend on. And this is a picture from Kenya, where you can see how a town is growing into the hills and the forests. And then the result, again, of this monograph, huge soil erosion. I think more than a third of the global soils are eroded. Basically, they are unfit for producing healthy and sufficient food for the people. But again, that industrial model doesn't have to be there. I think we have shown through research that you can do things very differently. You can have agroforestry, you can have, again, plants mixed with trees, using cover crops, basically having your landscape cut down in smaller pieces where you grow many different things. It's not only good for the environment, it's good for your health, because again, you want not to eat only corn or only beans, but you want to have a diverse diet. And a diverse diet, a natural diverse diet, comes really from a diverse environment. Now people say, yeah, but we got a problem. We have to grow more food and all this. Actually, this is not true. Still about half the food we produce is not even consumed. Very important to know. A third of it is wasted, and we still produce biofuel. So we use land, which is in short supply on a global scale, not the least because of the erosion. So we grow it for biofuels. We don't need that. Some countries, think about Uruguay. 90% solar and wind natural energy powered country. So if they can do it, everybody can do it. And I think it's a matter of will to change things around. And so leave the land for our biodiversity, for diverse cropping system, for agroforestry system wherever needed and appropriate. Very important. And that food system of today not only doesn't barely feed the people, no, it doesn't, because or nourishes people. We have 800 million hungry people in this planet. It doesn't change. It's been like this for many, many years, decades. But we are destroying everything around us. We are promoting climate change because of all the fertilizer we use. Again, we are losing all the genetic diversity and the species diversity we need. Um, the land system, our land, has been taken away by sprawling cities. Instead of building up, we're building out on good land, quite often on best of the land, overusing water, and also producing all kinds of geochemicals. Think about all the pollution, the chemical pollution, the plastic pollution we have out there. It's just huge. And so that's partly, or the big part of all these red areas here, where we move beyond the safe operating space, is due to our food system. And so again, there is a way to deal with this. So how do we get there? Actually, it's important to figure out. We had all kind of helpers out there: bees, natural predators, soil organism, water recycling, nutrient recycling organism there, and we had farmers. But again, and all these produced food for our animals and for people. But what happened? So these ecosystem services, which are the bottom line there, which the red line goes across, have been swapped for products where we can make money. Oh yeah, you can make money with selling irrigation instead of having a soil which absorbs the water. You can make money with fertilizer instead of having insects and bacteria and soil-borne organisms who transform these materials in nutrients reachable by the plants. Pollinators. People are thinking now of creating robot bees to go pollinate while we keep spraying the ones we have for free. Same thing with beneficial insects. All right, why don't we need these things? We just can go spray some pesticides and kill them, or use GMOs. So you can see the approach which has been taken by agriculture to make a food system where we can produce huge amount of lousy, cheap food. Look at the obesity problem out there. Look at the sick people everywhere. And that all has to do with our food system of, again, overprocessed foods coming out from a few crops like corn and soybean. So again, I think you need to understand, that this connection between the food system and the environment and back. So not that people have not been thinking about doing something about it. Again, I was the co-chair of this famous report here, the IAASTD report we published in 2009. Okay, so that's now already 14, 15, almost 16 years ago, actually. We started a bit early. It took us 4 years to make that report. We said business as usual is not an option. Today, we are mostly doing still business as usual, at least in the large-scale agriculture as seen here in America, in countries in Latin America, and also partly in Europe. Yes, there is a change. There is something happening, but the rate of the change is abysmal. And I think the wrong agriculture still overpowers, the good one. And there's been reports written and more reports written and saying we need to do something about our biodiversity. Just look at, the UN, totally broke. We heard a few days ago, they have billions in debts. So FAO is one of these UN agencies and many others who are supposed to be funded to help this transformation of the food system. But again, look at who is blocking the money are the people who are behind large-scale farming, who are behind the globalized food system, which again has shown all the weaknesses since the Ukraine war and many other areas in the world where there has been droughts, civil unrest, etc. Even countries where basically, like the US or Europe, we each have like 40 million people who don't eat every day to satisfy their needs. So this is not like only in Africa or in Asia or in some Latin or Central American countries. It's everywhere. So again, there need to be this change. So the UN called the UN Food Summit in 2021, which was very much criticized because it did not really endorse agroecology by name. They had figured out another name for a change, nature based agriculture. What is that? You know, we have agroecology. And so a number of countries got together with organizations. Biovision was very much behind all this to create the Agroecology Coalition. We funded the secretariat for a while, still do. And it's very important to see that now 51 governments, for over 400 members, 260 organizations, are actually part of this Agroecology Coalition. We see some countries having a policy, a national policy for agroecology also. So things are actually going somehow in the right direction. But you see, we need a mass movement, not individual few countries here and there, and to make the change. You know, when you have to take this whole thing and turn it upside down. And I think it's important. We have the science, we have the knowledge, we have the farmers who are willing, we have the consumers who are also willing. So now it needs the effort from the policymaker. That these decision makers need to push the lobby of the bad guys aside and give a chance for the good ones to move with their work, which again has proven that it can nourish, not feed, but nourish a global population. So agroecology is what we are talking about here when we talk about a sustainable food system. And I think it's important to also talk about this in terms of it's nothing new. Agroecology has been around in Latin America for a long, long time, for decades. And agroecology is actually it's a science, it's a practice, it's backed scientifically. It's a practice for millions of farmers around the world already, and it's also a movement because we need movement. We need mass movements to change things. Um, and so here, Stephen Glisman at UC Santa Cruz has developed these 5 levels of agroecology. FAO, UN organization in Rome, eventually picked this up and created, took it apart a little bit and made it 10 elements. Eventually, the people behind agroecology managed to get the high-level panel. It's a panel which is sits has a seat in FAO in Rome. Came out with 13 principles, and these principles are now you can read them in the literature everywhere, and they are basically the evolution of agroecology and its implementation. So we have print guiding principles to follow to change the food system. So again, and all this is all proven. And then we have the global biodiversity framework, and which again, don't mind the details here. It's just what is important here is the connections between what we have those global biodiversity framework targets and the agroecology principles. So you can see that there's an overlapping between the people who talk biodiversity and the people who go talk more about food, agroecology. So we are speaking the same language. We are getting together to get things done. But it's complex. This is just a view of the system, the food system, all these connections. So again, industrial agriculture has tried to simplify all this. You cannot simplify such a complex system because you're always going to miss something important who will come visit you later. We have seen this so many times. Oh, there's a bug here in your field, spray it. Fine, you spray it. 2 weeks later, you have another outbreak because you then not only kill some of the pests, you kill all the beneficial. And there you go again and again. And that's why it's because you do not consider what you're doing within a system who has a lot of feedback loops. And so again, we need to start to think in system. Linear thinking is something of the past. System thinking is where we need to get going. And maybe AI will help us with this whole system thinking. since it seems that our brain have been degenerating over the years rather than going the other way, while we delegate the thinking, the hard thinking, to robots. We'll see what happens. But I think we need to be in charge and understand that the system is very complex. Now, you have probably heard that, yeah, what is agroecology? What is organic agriculture? And then there's permaculture stuff here, there's agroforestry over there, nature positive, nature based. So again, these are all sort of co-optation of terms which people try, or some people try to get clients by not for their system, instead of actually applying the agroecology principles, which are encompassing. And on this graph, you can see is that, even organic agriculture biodynamic is not fully within the agroecology principles because it lacks, sometimes at least, the social, the movement component. And so that's important, that we stop inventing new stuff, that we go back to agroecology, to the 13 principles, the 10 elements, the 5 levels, and that we really apply that. So I think that's really where we need to go and stop with reinventing something just to fit a particular need or capacity of a particular group of people. So, way back, used to be a member of the International Panel of Experts in Food System. We published a report about, again, agroecology and how we need to do this transformation. Both the subsistence ag, like the industrial ag, needed to transform, to do away, and not the least because we want to have diversified system and system which are also not only diverse, but where within we have the diversity. And so some few important points are like seed sovereignty in climate change. So again, we want plants who are adaptable to different climates. And that means that we have to have more seeds. And who is the best person to keep the seeds are the farmers, mostly women farmer. So I think we need to make sure that, this food sovereignty issue and seed sovereignty issue is taken very seriously because that's important. We don't want to just one variety of corn covering millions of hectares. What happens when a disease comes in or a bug? Well, everything goes. We have seen that here before. So just to say that diversity is key. So we want more, not less. And so also then we need to empower the farmer again, and that means leveraging their knowledge but also linking them to the science and working together. I think this is something which is very important, this sort of co-creation, working together. And in a fairly recent paper, Garibaldi showed also how the crop diversity, of high or low, affects, the machinery we use, the inputs, the processing and the commercialization, and how also it increased employment. We have millions of people coming online for the workforce in Africa, in Asia, Latin America. Okay, not so much in Europe and North America. And so what are they going to do? They can be successfully employed in the food system. But if we have a low crop diversity, well, we're only going to have a few very big tractors, a lot of inputs, because we don't have the diversity to create those inputs. The processing will be over-processing, very few, and the commercialization, big companies commercializing food, finished food, over-processed food on a national and global scale. And again, less employment. So again, we have to think of the whole system. Now, when you look at this and further, we have this black system there where we came from a very green, nice, diverse agriculture, which, by the way, is productive. Okay, it can produce enough food for everybody. That's not the issue. But then, came the people in the food system. So with these pyramids here, so where earlier we had a lot of greeneries we were eating, that changed to go to more dairy and meat. And that actually then led partly to this issue of industrial agriculture. So unless we change this pyramid here, we put it back, on this wider bottom here, I think we will not be able to make that change. So again, we have to understand that the food system and what and how we eat has a major implication. So we have also, when we look at their support, so the agricultural component has been getting a lot of support from the biodiversity folks out there. Not that they always work together the way they should have, but I think, again, there has been a number of efforts. In addition, so to this big report on agriculture, which I mentioned before, the ISTAD, a few years earlier, there was a very landmark the convention created, the Convention of Biological Diversity, which is a very important body, and again, which is there to conserve biological diversity, the sustainable use, that's where agriculture comes in, right? So the health sector partly. And again, what is coming out of those genetic resources? Farmers have been collecting seeds and maintaining them, multiplying them, selecting them over eons. And now people come from the industry, grab those seeds, make a little change somewhere, and put a patent on it, and then the farmers got to buy them back. I mean, you think that's fair? I don't. And so the convention is a number of bodies which meet regularly to discuss issues. But again, right now, they have a lot of lead in their wings, unfortunately, because mostly money issues to implement all these decisions which are made, which actually are supposed to be implemented by the governments of the world who have signed on the convention. And then there was even a framework created. Out of this came this global biodiversity framework, again, which was adopted in 2022. And again, it developed, but the goal, look at that, halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030. That's the end of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. We'll come back to them later. So there were 23 targets. Again, the threat to biodiversity, how can we have more sustainable use and benefit sharing, the benefit of this biodiversity conservation? And again, how do we implement basically all the needed actions to meet the targets? So again, when you look at this global biodiversity framework, relevance for agroecology, again, it's supposed to provide finance opportunities, networking platforms, and also policy coherence. I think you cannot, on the one side, spend a lot of money on subsidies for monocrops, and at the same time think that this is going to help biodiversity. Okay, so I think one has to be really clear here on how, and what's possible and what should be done. And when you look here, so again, what's again relevant to agroecology in this global biodiversity framework is the target 10. So like in the SDGs, there are a number of targets and goals. Here we have a targets also. And again, I think the whole thing here is to have biodiversity-friendly practices, such as agroecological and other innovative approaches. So this is actually the title of the high-level panel on food security of FAO in their report on agroecology. So just to say so, it's written everywhere, up, down, front, and back. But again, our decision maker paying attention. Most of the time, you will hear that, oh, it's all nice and good, but we don't have the money. We need to invest elsewhere. Now, if we don't invest in our diversity, in biodiversity, in the wider sense of the word, then what's the point? In a few years we'll be all done. And here I will go to just a few examples of this national biodiversity strategy action plans. Funny acronym, never can remember what it means. So again, the framework has had three main areas: targets for less threat to biodiversity, meet people's need, which is important. The people need not only the few, but the majority, and tools and solutions for implementing and mainstreaming. So how are we going to do all this now once we decided what we want to do? And so here there's a number of these, so we'll go detail out a few. So again, on reducing threats, agroecological farming. It makes sense, right? We use less chemicals, we use climate-friendly practices, cover crops, biological control. So again, so all these is part basically of reducing the threat to biodiversity. We also need good soil management to improve life in soil on the ground, create soils which feed the plants, and not just take the shortcut of throwing some fertilizer there to feed the plant directly. So I think we know that. And again, doing this will help climate because we get more carbon in the ground. Having more carbon in the ground helps also having more life in the ground. So we want living soils rather than dead soils, which are basically the soils, third of the world, eroded soils. And again, I mentioned earlier also that landscape is important. So we can not only think field, we need to think landscape because that's very important. Things are connected, and you could see earlier all these connections in the system. That's why we need to think a landscape. So beyond what's happening beyond the farm, beyond the field, into the larger landscape. And when you do landscape, you do another thing automatically. You have to include the community, you know, everybody which is in the landscape. Not only the farmers, but you have the consumers, you have decision makers, you have all kind of people there who will help you. And a sort of a neutral landscape. So again, you have to include, and not the least, which is important in a landscape, is the watershed, water availability. And right now, you know, there are a lot of issues about water in many places. Is it mine? Is it yours? Water is a common good, and we need to share it. But before that, we actually need to conserve it. This is even more important. So again, I think here we have just some ideas, again, on how to reduce the threats to biodiversity is actually to be proactive and really promote it. And using less chemicals would always help a lot doing this. And if we talk about meeting people's need, again, we want many different varieties of all what we grow. They have different characteristics, different health support characteristics. So again, that's why we have to support these local seed banks, which is something which helps, again, not only share the benefits, but also share what has been collected over the eons by the farmers and the preferential use of these products, which will keep this diversity going. We have seed banks where a lot of seeds have been collected, putting away for the future. Svalbard, for example, up in Norway, in a very deep cave where it's very cold to keep seeds, very good. The best way to keep seeds is to keep them in the environment where they're supposed to be growing. And you need to renew them, you need to grow them again and again. And I think so that's where I think you can also get income for those farmers, particularly women who do a lot of that work. And just a small example, you know, on tools and solutions for implementing mainstreaming. Again, you need to have fair control and access of the resources, land and water. I mean, these are two things which are very, very important and quite often not really assured anywhere. So again, access to land and access to water are key to make sure we can implement properly agroecological practices. So here, just quickly, a few policies. When you want to move this curve from left to right, which means more sustainable, there are a number of things you can do. So first, you can support the transformative system, okay? Which means that we need more research in agroecology, natural ways of growing your food, in particular in soil science, soil biology, which is so important to grow better and more in sustainable manner. And also we have to have a demand. So unless you have a demand, people are ready to pay some bit more, I think for healthy food, it's not going to happen either because the farmers need to have a market for their stuff. And then we also need to incentivize improvements in all the system. And you do that through subsidies. So you can have the farmers in the transition to move from A to B. And that's again, huge subsidies are being used today in agriculture on a global scale, actually mostly for the same old stuff. Why? It's because the lobby of the industry makes sure that whatever subsidies are given, they're going back to John Deere for their tractors, to Pioneer for their seeds and others. And again, raising the legal I'm sorry, I need to, yeah. We need to raise the legal requirements and industry norms. I think if we have better regulation, let's say residue of pesticides, I think we can already also help the move to more sustainable agriculture. So here there's just a set of policies, among many others, we'll come back to later on, to move. So again, when these new policies are very, very important. So first of all, you have to make sure the old ones are eliminated. You cannot just have new policies on top of old policies because there's no money here to implement them. And so in terms of research, we need to start to be more aware of the co-creation of knowledge in agroecology. So farmers working together with the scientists in their fields, not necessarily in the lab, but also that's very important. Um, Again, application of novel agroecology compatible technologies. There's a lot of robotics these days which can be used in agriculture and for weeding, for example, or for planting. So there's a lot of new ideas we're coming across which are now possible to do. So again, technologies are part of agroecology. We're not talking about an agriculture which goes back to the Middle Age. We're talking about agroecology as a system, as a set of practices which are modern, which are not killing the farmers, but helping them do a better job. And again, we need partnerships across all the discipline, forms of knowledge, traditional, scientific, name it. Marketing structure, I mentioned before, unless there's market for this product, nothing works. So again, we need to have marketing structure in place for agroecology products. And Biovision actually with partners in Uganda are having a very great program there to help the locally inspired and started companies who want to sell agroecological products. And again, everything needs money. So where do you get it from? So again, I think people have to start to become a bit more creative. But still, I think a lot can be done also with local funding, reassigning those subsidies and the monies which are being used. And again, I think that the people who are behind agroecology need to have a closer connection with the government, because in the end, the government need to decide agroecology is the national policy for food production. And so the subsidies, the support would go to agroecology and not to the ones who do the same old system. And again, there are countries we need more help than others. I think we need to make sure that they are getting helped and apply those principles. I mean, this is the thing or the basis of it. So we want to make agroecology the reference practice for future food systems, right? And I need to be powered by diversity, by restored biodiversity in all dimensions. Okay, from the landscape diversity, the people's diversity, the species and genetic diversity, all has to be there. And I think, again, when we look at this, it's fine, but we had developed and globally agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals, which are ending 2030 with really mixed results. So whatever we try to do here has to be seen again in the framework of the SDGs. So again, the specific national targets on bringing agroecology to scale. Again, national agroecology policies are being developed. So important that they look at the 13 principles, but also what has been said in the SDGs. And again, integrate agroecological support intervention within, again, this national biological strategy and action plans. Okay, I got it. Okay, so we look at the SDGs. You know, when agroecology, in an analysis of I think some 30 countries in Africa, you can see that agroecology contributes positively to 10 of the 17 SDGs. Again, why? It's because all this connection in the system, and here we show, you know, how agroecology, even by 2050, would help. So how you move much faster if you do agroecology in most goals than if you don't. So again, how much more evidence do you need to get the decision makers to make those decisions to make agroecology the national agricultural policy? What more do you need? I think it's to get rid of all the lobbyists around who talk different language. And there's a wider benefit for this transformation. Food system to agroecology is a big part of the planetary boundary solution. So I showed you these planetary boundaries and how we are messing up everything. But if we do our actions and policies through the eye of the agroecology, we can impact the planetary boundaries in a very positive way. So again, we have a lot to contribute to save the world and ourselves. Now, who stands in the way of the transformation? Because obviously it's not working. I mean, it's going, but it's very hard. You know, we have slowed down everywhere. And right now, actually, in this latest political framework on a global scale right now, oh, there's no money for anything except for the big guys and for maybe AI and other things. That's not going to grow food. So we have this concentration of power, which is concentrated even more now. And again, acceptation of cheap food, well, that does help the farmer. Export, that is this globalized food system, which has shown its failures in the past 15, 20 years, since the big financial crisis, 2008. The path dependency, oh, we have done it like this, it works, so let's do more of it. What is success? Kilogram per hectare or nutrition per hectare? Nutrition, obviously, not calories. Short-term thinking, oh, you know, we just think about tomorrow, and after tomorrow we'll see what happens. That's why biodiversity is so much at stake. Compartmentalized thinking. There again, you know, everybody is a specialist in a narrow area. So are we starting to talk together and find solutions which build on each other, who create synergies? And then feed the world narrative. Okay, so what? A few countries, areas will feed the rest of the world? No. We have to decentralize this global food system, which failed the people around the world several times already. So let's now again go back and do agroecology, which again calls for a decentralization and localization of the food system from production to consumption. And you know, that means that the money has to go to the right place. Is it going? Well, maybe, maybe not. An example from Kenya here shows that most funders, and the biggest one, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it's only the Bill Foundation now, spends most of their money in developing agriculture under the AGRA program in traditional, the old stuff, as does the government of Kenya, old stuff. The blue and dark green is only actually what's funded by the Swiss government, SDC, in Kenya, which actually fits an agroecological transformation. All the rest, Gates and the government are still putting their money into that industrial, conventional type agriculture, which has shown it is bankrupt. It is not working. It will never work properly, but they're still maintain and do it. So we have 5 main levers for scan of agroecology. So where can we really apply our lever to conclude? So we have looked, we have explored, different agroecological practices. They are not just a necessity for the environment and for our biodiversity, but they are really vital for the longevity, the survival of our food systems, the health of our communities, and the health of the environment. So this is, again, all connected. And I think now we need to act. We have set the stage for agroecology. We have shown there's thousands of publications out there which show that agroecology can produce enough healthy food for everybody. So again, let's talk to these decision makers, stakeholders, that they will take responsibility for this transformation. And that's where also Biovision, we have been doing this for now more than 20 years, supporting transformation of the food system, taking an integrated view of what's going on out there rather than just sort of a pigeonhole, paying a little bit here, a little bit there, and then it doesn't connect. So again, this beautiful design here from Biovision actually shows, sort of how to transform the system. Where are the main levers we can action? So I'll finish here. Thank you very much. I think transforming food system is vital, and our future depends on it. I'm not saying that you all have to eat insects, but why not? Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Herren. It was a fantastic presentation. Yanis.
Yes, Dr. Herren, thank you very much. And I'm not sure, Claudio, if we have already.
I can manage the Q&A session. Okay. I only ask our participants inside of the metaverse, inside of the Virtual Expo app. If you have any questions, please write them down in the chat, because it is the only interaction that we can have at the moment. And while the people is writing their own questions, I had a question that perhaps is naive, but it may allow to start the Q&A. I will start myself. So a few years ago, I was working very heavily on mutualistic interactions, okay? And they actually support a lot biodiversity as a whole. When you have a plethora of pollinators and the plants, etc., they reinforce each other. And the question that I had is, how is it that these mutualistic interactions are reinforced or not by agroecology? And the question that I have later following that is, what happens if in a perhaps not so distant future, because of lack of some of these insects, pollinator insects, some of them are replaced by micro robots that are actually performing the same task? What is happening with, let's say, the resilience of the ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah, I think, thank you for that, Captain Claudio. I think, we need to, again, always consider the whole system, because if you look at, take a part of it out, you can understand how it operates. But again, you have to also understand what else may affect it. Pollination may be affected also by the availability of plants, which may change with climate change. And climate change will affect the bees and the wild bees, again, differently than the plants. So you have all these moving parts in that system, which makes it very, difficult to manage in some ways, or to make changes. So what you want to do really is to understand it, and then you can move one variable or the other and see a little bit what happens, which way this whole thing is going. So to me, it looks like, yeah, the important part is we need to understand it better. I think, so that's why science and research, and needs to put an effort. So how does this all work? It's the same with all this underground, the latest research on fungi, what's going on underground, how plants communicate with each other. They help each other with sending water from one plant to the other. I mean, it's mind-boggling what we can do now. And thanks to the molecular tools we have now, we can actually understand and we can test a lot of these things. So to me, it looks like, yeah, what's going to happen, with all the changes? Let's try to understand them, and those, what's happening when there are climate change, for example, or change in diversity out there, and see, can we really manipulate this? I'm not sure. I think we have to be really careful with the idea that, oh, we can manipulate everything, we can fix it. Some things are broken, they're broken, right? I mean, you made a nice vase, you drop it, you can glue it back together, but there's always going to be holes, and it's never going to be that great, right?
If complex systems teach us something, is that basically you have a lot of unintended consequences when you try to operate on them. You end up doing something completely different than what expected. Thank you very much.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you. I have a question. I am looking into the chat. There is a question by Ivanoe. Thank you for your question. What he's asking is, what would be the best way to fund agroecology and to develop it quickly? And this is his question.
Yeah, that's actually the critical point. So how do you fund it? And I think I did sort of point to subsidies. And to me, it looks like, agriculture gets a lot of subsidies. It doesn't matter where you look. You can look in Switzerland, you can look wherever. But for what exactly are these subsidies given? Now, the farmers are always very worried that if you move around subsidies, they will end up short. So what I've been saying, no, we take the same amount or even increase the subsidies, but give them to farmer only to apply the 13 principles, not apply pesticides, synthetic fertilizer, mono GMO crops or whatever, sort of to do sustainable agricultural practices as developed, I think, under the agroecology principles. So to me, it looks like that's how you can fund, because the money is there. It's not so that you have to do anything, and you give it to the farmers, but you help those farmers actually make the transition, and that comes at a cost. There's a risk which has to be covered. When you do something different, you don't know if it's going to work. Okay, they take a risk. So that has to be covered. And that's why the government can actually also, let's say, finance, they do that in some countries, risks, an insurance, like an insurance scheme. So there are ways to do that fairly quickly. So that money is there. It just have to be reassigned.
Okay, thank you very much. Leron, your question got cropped because the system only allows very short statements. So if you want to write the final part, I will be able to send it to Hans. Sasuke has one question, that is, you mentioned that the government's role in supporting biodiversity at the end of the day is fundamental. You have been also touching this point in the previous answer. Which are the concrete steps that individuals can take in order to positively, this is government on the one side, now what is it that individuals can do to positively impact biodiversity in their daily lives?
Yeah, I think so. It's really the food choices, and again, I understand the issue here, because if you want to eat healthy, okay, organic or biodynamic or whatever sustainability sources you get your things from, they're more expensive usually than your cheap food, which has been subsidized. And so the consumer really has to fork out a bit of more money on the one hand, at least for a while, but not forever. The thing is that we have mentioned, and actually I forgot to mention it, but it's in the slides there, is that if we go over to true cost accounting, you'll solve the problem of price differential between healthy food and industrial overprocessed food. And that will take a while, but there is a lot of work going on right now to calculate, what are the externalities of your cheap food. If you get a chicken for, let's say, 5 francs, I'm not sure if that still exists, which is conventional, versus a chicken for 10 francs, which is organic, that chicken which you paid, or you pay $5, has costs outside on your health, for example, on the environment. So you have to go and clean water. You're going to have to do all kinds of things out there in order to mitigate the costs of that cheap chicken. In the end, and which is use taxpayers' money. So in the end, you're going to have to pay $10 too, or 10 francs too for that chicken, but you pay it via your taxes, via your healthcare costs, via environmental cleanup. And so you see, we have this issue right now on finding the way to really account for all these externalities and include them in your price. Eventually you will see that your organic food is cheaper, and you have more benefits. The happiness which you can already monetize will be higher too.
Okay, exactly. Thank you very much. I had
Claudio, I think you have
so I
been-
will not be able to 100% correct, but I got the I still remember the spirit of the question. The question is as follows: you have been mentioned that in general there are metrics that are more related to production in monetary terms. If you have to create other metrics that you mentioned one of them in your talk, but if you were able to create other metrics that relate more to a positive outcome of the production of agriculture, what you would, how we would develop them, in which line should they go?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we are sort of used to transform everything down to money. But again, because it's just sort of the simplest way of doing things, and even like true cost, so we say, all right, what are the costs, the externalities? And there are a number of things we actually cannot calculate. And I think it's what's the value, the real value of biodiversity. And so again, a lot of people, they say, no, don't put any money price tag on it, because then it becomes something you can buy and sell. I think we have to figure ways, and I don't have the answer here either, So how can we value biodiversity? I mean, the first slide, all these beautiful butterflies, landscape. So, you cannot pay for that. So you have to find something else, sort of. I mean, there are happiness index out there, which are very complicated in Bhutan, for example, and they have done that. We were even involved in this with my institute, the Millennium Institute, way back. And so, okay, what are all the factors which may contribute, to well-being? So, what is well-being, for example? And I can suggest that anyone who wants to look a little bit at this should double check the happiness index, which the Bhutanese have been applying and using as a metric to figure out, are they on the right development path or not. But yeah, this is an area which needs attention, because if we put everything always into money, we're probably going to miss the bigger picture.
Correct. Thank you very much. Then the other question that I had noted before was related to the, give me a second because I can't. Yeah. The other question was related to land concentration, because agroecology is something that melts much more. This was a question I got from the public. Melts much more with smaller communities. Which are the challenges that appear? And I think that this also goes into a comment by one of the other participants, is actually in many of the countries in which this is fundamental, actually there is a lot of land concentration. So which are the challenges to implement this kind of agriculture when you have such big concentration in land? Because then you were mentioning lobbies a couple of times, and actually there is a lot of industry, food industry, that is globalized as well. So it is very challenging to perform, to overcome the barrier that they impose. So can you please tell how do you envision the real adoption? Because governments perhaps are not necessarily in the line of the adoption, let me say it that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is another very critical issue: the land access to land, and because of the concentration. I mean, farms. We are losing thousands of farms a day, on a global scale.
Mhm.
I don't know what the number is in Switzerland, but I remember at the time there were like every week, I don't know how many farms going. So we are wondering what happened then, where's the land going? Exactly. So what happens basically is concentration, get big or get out, right? I mean, is the thing.
Yeah.
And in farming, that works only up to a level. I think you have to be careful there, because are we talking about family farms where there's a farmer, he or she, maybe what brother, sister, I don't know, kids helping, or are we going to an industrial model where you just have employees? There's no farmer there. Basically, there's a farm manager. The farm belongs to bank ABC, and they will just handle things the best way to make a lot of money quick. So the government really have to decide on how is land managed. And in many countries in the world, land belongs to the government, and you have a long-term lease.
Correct.
You don't really own it. You lease it, and you have the rights. Your children have the rights to renew the lease as first. If they want, if they don't want, they give it up to the public again. And I think this is the way to deal with land. To privatize land, which is a common good, it's just like water, I think creates a lot of problems.
Uh-huh.
Now, again, I'm not sure you can go back. Maybe some country will go back. I don't know. We'll see. But we have to find a way for a just allocation of land. I mean, the price of land. If I wanted to come back to Switzerland and be a farmer like I'm a farmer here, there's no way in the world I could actually buy a farm and make a living wage, to pay off even the loan. So we have reached a point, even here, sometimes some farms, that it's just no way. The price has gone way beyond what the land could produce, even in the best possible case. So I think this question is very important because it hits a major challenge we have.
Yeah.
But again, that doesn't mean that even larger farms cannot move to agroecology. There are large farmers here. I know a good friend of mine is a rice and tomato farmer here. He's got like, I don't know, probably several thousand acres. He's one of the first organic producer, and now even a real organic producer certified here in California. So again, you can do large scale. I mean, he has to hire a lot of people to do some of the work, which he cannot do with machines or with chemicals. And so he does this. Again, his rice and his tomatoes are more expensive than others. So again, there are ways of, in some cases, I think it's really something which government need to think about harder, and also the people within the agroecology community to find the right solutions there to allow people who want to farm according to those agroecology principles can do it. Again, with making a living, right? You, at the end of the day, you need to pay your bills. So, and I'm a farmer here, so I have a little farm. We have 200 ducks. We have like more than 500 fruit trees of all different things. We've been investing money. We're still investing, okay? We're not yet over the hill. So just to say that it takes a lot of money to make money in agriculture.
I think that now Yanis and myself are even more appreciative because we also understand the amount of time that you must devote actually to the farm. It is certainly a very time-consuming task. There was another question by Baker. Yeah. Thank you for your question, which is there any institution capable of driving real food system change without a stronger global collaboration? For example, I am labeling for a really strong United Nations, etc. Isn't this almost a lost fight?
I mean, I've said that FAO, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization, I mean, they always have not enough money, but still they have some. They're better off than some other UN agencies right now, still. I know they're under great pressure also to put agroecology a bit to the side and let the big ag, I've been so many times to those meetings there. And again, the representatives of US, Canada, Australia, they're always pushing the other direction. But in the end, the organization has endorsed and basically developed those 13 principles and is helping government to implement them. So there are moves, and I think that if we had a stronger FAO, which more independent of the few countries who give a lot of money, I think we could go there. We could get more help. So as one institution which can help because they have country representatives where the local decision makers can go get information, that certainly would work. I think there's also a need for the many foundations and philanthropic organizations to really adopt agroecology as the practice which they will go and help people implement or give the money to do, give the research to do so. Again, Biovision has been sort of the forefront of this. We have been doing this since the very start. That's why I created it to begin with. But others like the Gates Foundation, which is so much bigger, has so much more money, or the African Development Bank, which spends billions in supporting agriculture. These are the ones we need to be convinced that there is another way, a sustainable way.
Correct.
And so to me, it looks like we need to find ways to talk to these people, to the representative of the World Bank, of the whatever regional development banks, so that they start to invest in this alternative agriculture with a future.
Fantastic. I think that this is a very good way of closing the session today. Thank you very much for your participation today. It has been fantastic and very allows us to better know how uphill all this battle is. So but thank you very much for sharing all your thoughts with us, Professor Herren. Thank you so much. Yanis?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Claudio. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, everybody in the room there and online. It was a pleasure to be with you today. And don't hesitate to connect with me. I think you can find me somewhere on the internet.
You can see also the aula there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
People is running in the aula. Thank you very much, people, for the participation and for all the questions. Were very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Good, people. So thank you very much for your intervention. It was a very interactive session. We had a technical glitch that I hope that we managed to survive in a way. Looking forward to see you in the next edition. Yanis, once again, thank you very much for this very nice collaboration.
Thank you, Claudio. Thank you, and I wish all the participants a nice evening, and thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.